Okay, I think that kind of worked out nice for me there. All right. Still trying to get used to this streaming stuff and figuring this out. This kind of reminds me of when I was in college. I used to have a radio show, so this is giving me radio show vibes. I like it. I like it. It feels very nostalgic, very exciting. I appreciate it. Good evening to all of you who are joining me in internet land. Whether you're watching on Twitch, whether you're watching on YouTube, what's up? How y'all doing? Hopefully you're doing well. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Yeah, hope everybody's week has been going well, and and you're enjoying life. You're making the most of it. So, like the last time I was streaming, which I think was about a week ago, maybe I don't know. Days and stuff are starting to run together, but I can't be on long because I have to get up and go to work in the morning. So, I'm gonna try to give myself just like an hour. I can't go past midnight because I gotta make sure I sleep. But, anyways, today, um, I saw a video and suggested whatever about Courage the Cowardly Dog. I love Courage the Cowardly Dog. That was a show that I grew up on as a child in the 90s, going into the 2000s, and I thought it was an amazing show, right? So let's see. Let me make sure I'm getting all my information right. When did Courage the Cowardly Dog come out? Let's look it up. Oh wow. It came out 1999. Wow. That's actually very very exciting. Let's get rid of these ads. What's going on here? Oh no, not expand. Courage the Cowardly Dog. Wow. 1999 to 2002. That's amazing. That's amazing to me. This little purple pink dog has made such a cultural impact. Um, in, I guess, particularly my generation and maybe the next generation. But I think people have mixed feelings about the show, right? Like, some people thought it was hilarious and thought it was just an amazing show. And then come to find out, people also thought the show was actually like traumatizing, like really, really, really creepy. And I get it. It's kind of like a spin on, I don't know, sci-fi shows, or even this is paranormal. So this is the description of Courage the Cowardly Dog. The offbeat adventures of Courage, a cowardly dog who must overcome his own fears to heroically defend his unknowing farmer owners from all kinds of dangers, paranormal events, and menaces that appear around their land. I enjoyed the show. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was funny. I definitely think there were some episodes that were like, that's kind of weird, but I would never describe it as scary or traumatic or overly creepy. There are other shows that I thought were creepier than Courage the Cowardly Dog. Absolutely. Like, some things that I literally, as a child, if I heard the theme song to one show in particular, I would run out of the room. I would. Or eventually I would learn how to turn the channel and not watch it. Let me see. I'm going to give you a second to think about which show this might be. So again, this is the 90s going into the 2000s. So if I heard the theme song, I would run out of the room. Let's see if I can pull this up. But like, I I enjoy Courage, and I found out that there is this crossover movie with Courage and Scooby Doo that exists. I want to see it. Like, I want to see it because I think it'll be good. It makes sense to me. It absolutely makes sense to me. All right, I'm gonna play this real quick. Hopefully, this is the original. So, okay, yeah. This is this brings back this to me. This is traumatic, but this is a show that I was thinking about. Now, you can't tell me that Courage the Cowardly Dog is creepier than this. Every time this would come on, my skin would crawl and I would freak out. I would freak out. You can't tell me that y'all thought Courage was even close to that. Like, to me, that's traumatic. That's that like as an imprint. But I don't know. Hey, everybody has their different things. But anyways, I came across this, which I haven't watched yet. I guess a review or something, another YouTube video by a content creator. The channel name is Level One Rock, and the title of the video is "The Cartoon That Traumatized a Generation and Why We Love It." So I wanted to watch this and see what he's talking about, or see what they're talking about, and see really why people are traumatized by the show that clearly is made for kids. But I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was hilarious. Um, the only episode I'm trying to think. There are a lot of episodes in the show, but I can't think of a particular episode that I was like, oh wow, this is really freaking me out. I don't know. We'll see what the show is. We'll just jump into it and see what they're talking about.
We interrupt this program to bring you
nightmares.
Okay, that episode's good, but it wasn't anyway. I love that episode. I think it's funny.
So I was lucky enough to grow up during a golden age of children's television. We really
Facts.
had it all. Some of the funniest, coolest, and most heartwarming shows that many of us have thoroughly enjoyed for 20 years and counting. And while there were many
Facts.
lighthearted favorites to put on after school, I wouldn't be able to sit here today and tell you that we truly
Uh-huh.
had it all if this era didn't also include some of the dark side too, right? The ones that air after the sun goes down, when your fear of monsters under the bed starts to come out.
Okay, yeah,
Luckily
that's
for
creepy.
us in the late
Oh,
90s and
man. That's creepy. I kind of remember that. That one's creepy. Traumatic though? I don't know. And again, I guess in the concept of the show, it was supposed to be creepy to the best of their ability without actually really, really scaring children, right? Like, I'm trying to think of other cartoons. I also think, I also think what plays a part is what other things you were watching. So there was a lot of weird stuff that we were watching as children. Some of us, I think some of us were allowed to watch and experience things that other people were not because they probably had good parents. So, like, I'm thinking about shows like Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy. Some parents wouldn't allow their children to see or to watch Ren and Stimpy. Or another show that may have been considered creepy that I don't know why it doesn't come on this list. Real Monsters. Um, or other shows that were considered weird, something that I truly adore and love, but I know is a very strange show to some people. Invader Zim. I love Invader Zim. Invader Zim might be my favorite cartoon, but there are some aspects of the show that are just like weird, and maybe depending on who you are, it could be disturbing. But I don't know. Like, Courage just kind of fits in there, and it didn't really seem odd to me. But in hindsight, I do, this is just a personal conclusion. I do think um, people who grew up on these kind of cartoons, their minds might be a little warped, little strange. Um, Particularly if you were more fans of Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon shows over, say, like Disney Channel. I think for a period of time, if you were watching Cartoon Network, like strictly Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon cartoons, you might be a little off, just a little bit. And I say that as a person who I didn't really watch the Disney Channel at all. Strictly Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. On our cable box, it was channel 37, and Nickelodeon was channel 21. Um, Maybe that rings a bell to somebody. I don't know. but the shows were hilarious. I don't know, they were good. I don't know, but let's continue. Let's see what they were saying.
2000s, there was, in fact, a banger of an introduction to horror included in this era that for many of us was actually too scary to watch. Courage the Cowardly Dog
That's
was not your
crazy.
average children's cartoon, to say the least. While many kids' shows included a cast of a few friends, a family, often a school, and a lighthearted tone, this show completely rejected those tropes and denied us that comfortable familiarity. In this world, there's no friends, no school, no neighbors. There's just Courage, who acts as a stand-in for a child, with the lovely Muriel and her awful husband, Eustace, who all quite literally
Yeah,
live in the
Eustace
middle
was
of
trash.
nowhere.
Eustace was trash, but again, the dynamics of the family, like he was such a bad husband. Like there were so many times that he would just like throw Muriel under the bus and just not care about her because he wanted money or something. Stupid. Just oh gosh.
Right there. Nowhere.
There's a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
those subtle
some
details that help just make the show feel extra uncomfortable, like the fact that we can never see the parents' eyes. It's kind of like how in Tom and Jerry the parents' heads are always cut off. There's also the fact that we don't have a fun and catchy theme song like most of these other shows, but instead we just got this high-pitched voice on the TV interrupting what we were watching.
We interrupt this program to bring you Courage the Cowardly Dog Show.
the
In
music's
this world,
catchy.
there's
It's
extraterrestrial
fun.
visitors and supernatural disasters regularly. Basically, imagine if you lived in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, you might have fears of UFOs and aliens, things like that. All those types of fears, yeah, those come true all the time here. Your house is constantly being destroyed or abducted or relocated against their will. This world is flooded with abstract terror,
That one was
sinister
good. That's a good
surrealism,
episode.
cold sweat fever dreams,
Yo,
and utterly diabolical villains.
And tempt me to be naughty.
In this
that
world,
episode's
the
funny.
parental figures don't save you, they need saving.
Oh, Courage, help me.
In this world, something bad is always happening.
Quite literally, something's always like how did in a realistic sense, if we were trying to make this realistic, I feel like there has to be enough time in between these instances for them to like relax. You know what I'm saying? Because if this was happening back to back, why didn't they move? Why didn't they decide to like, all right, we're gonna call it quits. Too many crazy things are happening. We gotta go. I feel like it's like once a month. It's enough for them to be like, that was really strange. That was weird. Okay. And they just went back to normal life. And it wasn't enough to like leave such a mark on them that they're like, oh, we're gonna abandon this. Or maybe this is another thought that came to mind. Maybe this is the land that Eustace's family like was handed down to him, and because he's such a money miser, he's not gonna give it up, regardless of what happens. He's like, no, I'm not gonna give up my land. This is how they're making money somehow. All he's got is a truck, this land, and that's what he's holding on to. I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. But hey, what? Good evening. Hey, Themis. I don't know if I can't put I gotta work on that to be able to put the chat up. You said you were scared, but you loved it? Well, okay. I appreciate your honesty. But yes, the show is great. And I don't know. Tell me more. Do you have a specific episode that you were scared to like watch? If for those who are in the chat, let me know if there was a specific episode that you were like, this is too creepy for me. To the best of your recollection, which episode was that? Like, what was happening? But let's get back to this.
On occasion, there is no happy ending. So why is it then that all these years later, the show is still so beloved by the very fans that were traumatized by it?
My favorite response, and I've heard this far more than once, is, "You really were the head writer for Courage the Cowardly Dog? Wow, that show f***ed me up so bad. Thank you. Thank you."
Courage the Cowardly Dog, as I've mentioned and even made a whole video on, is one of my favorite shows of all time. I think it is the best cartoon ever made.
It's in my personal Hall of Fame for media that actually
It's pretty
managed
good.
to traumatize me. Like, this actually f***ed me up.
I
Maybe it's
don't
because
get
it
it.
counterbalances its darkness very well with zany absurdity. Maybe it's because of how
Oh,
cute this little
maybe.
dog is trotting his way through the nightmares and celebrating the little victories along the way. Maybe it's because underneath all of that terror, it's actually got some really sentimental themes threaded throughout and knitted with love in every stitch. Because in fact, the show wasn't just horror, it was comedy horror. It actually really delicately balances its darkness with lightheartedness. And
That's the fact that he keeps calling it horror is really strange to me. Like, I wouldn't, I don't know, I wouldn't consider it horror. Like again earlier, I referenced Are You Afraid of the Dark or maybe like Goosebumps. Like those were shows still directed at children. Those shows were, I thought, were scary or creepy, and I don't think they ever had any humor. They didn't have anything. to like bring it back. Like, no. Or even, was this a, I can't remember if this was a Disney show or a Nickelodeon show, but it was like So Weird or something like that. But it was, to me, it felt like a kid version of X Files or something like that. But to me, those shows would be like creepier than this. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe cartoons just have a special place in my heart that gives them a pass. Even though there are, again, there are some things that uh, shows or animations that are really creepy. Particularly if we're like starting to look into like anime. There's some real strange anime that I just can't do. It's like a little too much. Um, and then maybe like some web cartoons. Like, let me pull this up real quick, and I'm gonna get back on this. I'm just gonna pull up the picture because I don't want to watch this thing. This became a really popular. This was a really popular webtoon that came out based off of this 2004. These like fan art pictures of it or whatever, but Salad Fingers. This gives me the willies. I don't know why people like this. I don't know why people enjoyed this. This is freaky to me. This is a little much. This was too eerie for me. I couldn't do it. This was no. And at this point, 2004, no. Like this is like teenager age. I nope, couldn't do it. I tried. People would tell me that it's funny or whatever. I don't get the joke. I didn't get it. It didn't work for me. Nope, it's not happening. Can't do it. Can't do it. But I don't know. To each their own. This is just really surprising to me. But let's continue.
Those moments of coming up for air to be able to keep venturing back into the darkness, something that we might get to do later if we're lucky. There's a lot of fantastic voice acting and sound bites that the show brings, and you're going to be hearing a lot of them throughout this video and then probably sprinkled throughout my future videos because
It's simply too good.
first of all, the screams this dog would make. Like the primary feeling you get from watching the show is definitely the horror. But the more you watch it, the more those screams will start to ground you in reality that it's an inherently funny show too.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't like that bad things keep happening to this poor dog, but when they do, I can't help but have a laugh at it.
Where's Muriel?
Or even like when things start to get real bad, sometimes we might get a good. And they were always really inspired in how Courage screamed, weren't they? Like how they animated him. Sometimes his teeth would pop out. Sometimes his eyes would pop out. Sometimes he'd scream through his eyes. Sometimes he'd scream his skin off. Sometimes it'd cut to a different shot where he'd go up to the moon and scream the moon in tiny little pieces. Sometimes he'd scream through a trumpet. Sometimes we'd look at his tongue and it would have 6 smaller mouths screaming. It truly feels like they never wanted to animate him screaming the same way twice, and I really appreciate that commitment to originality. And while we're talking about great noises, sound bites, and vocal stems, we have to talk about the noises that Eustace would make. My personal favorite is, like sometimes he just says, but other times it's like the confusion overwhelms his brain and amasses into a critical hit. Another all-timer is,
Get away from me! Get away from me!
Eustace really is a piece of shit throughout the show, and
Facts. Absolute facts. This is terrible. Terrible in so many instances. Like, the only times it ever seemed like he had any care or endearment for Muriel or even Courage is when he wanted something. So, I don't know if they're gonna get to it, but there's one episode. It's probably one of my favorite episodes of the show. It's the one where there's this doctor who makes everybody depressed, more or less. But Muriel gets hit with this cannonball. There's a cannonball that would make people depressed. And she got hit with it. And so she's like super depressed. And Eustace is like, Muriel, who's gonna make my dinner? Like he doesn't even really care about her. He just wants her to make dinner. Oh gosh. But yes, Eustace is terrible.
often abuse Courage, get punished by Muriel rightfully, and then candidly ask,
What did I do?
and of course we see this one every time in the intro theme as well as throughout the show. They'll pull out this big scary green mask to scare Courage with a
Booga booga booga!
that mask was originally going to be a gun, and he would actually shoot Courage like they would in Looney Tunes. But then they ended up changing it to make it more child-friendly. But comedy aside, this show really was the intro to horror for a generation. Not just in the way it portrayed such horrifying images, but in the way it paid tribute to classic horror films. Isn't it cool when new artists tip their hats to the artists that they grew up with? It's like how Hanumankind used Project Pat's flow in his new mega hit Big Dogs.
Oh no, my stuff don't get. I'm trying to cut this up so I don't. I want my stuff to get out.
and did it in a way that actually honors the original.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree. He definitely, I think paying homage to other forms of media is absolutely important, and it should be done. Like, I did a video on uh, Invincible Fight Girl, and I did a review of the first episode, and there's so many things that reference like anime and other shows, and it's beautifully well done. I love that series. Actually, it's really good. I'm hoping that they come out with a second season because the story is just so good. The animation is good, the character development, voice acting, all this stuff is amazing. But I agree with what he's saying, like paying homage. One thing I just find interesting is like for this to be an introduction into, I guess, people's interest in horror. I have no interest in horror movies at all, or actual horror content. Like, if Courage the Cowardly Dog is a certain level of horror, that's as far as I'm gonna go. I don't want anything else. No horror movies, no horror shows, nothing. No. Courage. But again, to me, I wouldn't describe it as that. So this is really fascinating to me, honestly. All right, let's see. Let's keep going. I'm trying not to get censored.
What a wonderful cascade of history. Art's a beautiful thing, you guys. That's why this whole channel is about appreciating it. Courage tips its hat to The Exorcist for inspiring it, and then future artists would watch Courage and tip their hat to that for inspiring them. It's like how the song Crisis comes from Courage, and that song would later be sampled by artists like Josiah.
Okay, I didn't know there was so much music.
Of artists, there's a lot of questions I have for them. There's a lot of things I want to find out here. Like we said before, how is it that they made a show that traumatized a generation but still won their hearts in the end? Who is Courage? What is Courage? And how is it different than Fear? Why is Eustace so abusive? What does it mean to be a hero, and what does it mean to be a villain? In other words, what does this all mean? Well, in order to answer all those questions surrounding this traumatizing masterpiece, we need to dive into the minds of those who made it.
Go on, make yourself right at home.
First and foremost, Courage the Cowardly Dog wouldn't exist if it weren't for the mad scientist that is John R. Dilworth.
Hello, everybody. This is John R. Dilworth, and the R stands for Rumpelstiltskin.
It is his insane mind that we have to thank for scaring the shit out of us as kids.
Every single thing was orchestrated by me and my insane mind.
The first thing you need to know about John Dilworth is that he himself is just as much of a cartoon character as any of his creations.
That's fine.
We will see Chicken from Outer Space, the origins of Courage the Cowardly Dog, life in transition. We will see Dirty Birdie. Oh, so many things. And then the most horrific Cowardly Dog cartoons.
His veins pulse with rampant chaos. He's theatrical and animated, yet philosophical and profound.
You know, I said, hey, John, how come you can't see Muriel and Eustace's eyes behind the glasses? He says, because they're spiritually blind.
What?
And he's genuinely opened my eyes to a new level of appreciation for the art form of cartoons.
Absolute bedlam reigned in these studios where cartoon characters survived the most absurd things. You could rip your eyes out and put them back in, and it's not a worry. I mean, you can do this. You can stretch your tongue out, roll it back up, and it could beat against your mouth, and you'll be fine. You can get run over by a giant truck back and forth, and then walk out flat, and then you're back to normal. It was magic. You could just...
Yeah, you know who he reminds me of? Hold up. I agree with him. I think animation and cartoons in general is such a unique and beautiful medium that allows you to communicate things that you can't do in live action, which makes it so powerful to me. Like if in regards to visual media, so I think music is probably one of the most powerful mediums that we have that we can experience. In the visual realm, I feel like cartoons and animation is like the next powerful because even though I know people have their opinions, some people don't like cartoons at all, which is strange to me. But there is this possibility that you can really touch people and communicate things with whether it's realistic looking cartoons or whether it's just a talking car, like things that can capture people's hearts in a way that you couldn't do with actors or a live action. Like it just doesn't do it. It's so strange. And I don't know if it's because it touches us maybe on like a childlike level. Because most children have some experiences with cartoons. Whether it's in the comic books or drawings or whatever, like there's something we connect to maybe that pulls down that guard, like that level of hyper rationale, like the suspended belief that can exist when it comes to animation, but is powerful because it allows us to be able to discuss sometimes heavy things. It allows us to communicate serious messages in a way that is palatable to many people that just doesn't necessarily always work, whether it's through news or whether it's through literature or whatever. Cartoons just, I don't know, it's just magical. But I was going to look up, this guy looks like, let me see. Uh, oh, if I can find it. He does. He looks like this guy. Okay. He looks almost like this guy. Hold on. So he looks like, which is kind of funny since he's just talking about cartoons and the way that they look. He looks like the villain who framed Roger Rabbit, who was a cartoon. I was like, this guy's face looks so familiar. But yeah, he looks like he could have been this guy. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But he looks like that guy. That's hilarious to me. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he really is a cartoon or something. That's that's great. Okay, I'm liking what he's saying, but let's continue.
Experience anything. It's really quite an experience for them all.
I think the two key influences that John credits the most are this era of cartoons, and he specifically names Tex Avery.
Major influences
Yo, Tex Avery. Oh man. Oh,
Avery, who was part of what they call the golden age of Hollywood American cartoons, the late 30s and 40s and very early 50s.
As well as this silent film era, particularly the work of Charlie Chaplin.
If you look at Charlie Chaplin, this is cartoon, this is animation, this is performance
Yeah.
art, and he is among my greatest influences. Even today in schools, animators study the way Charlie Chaplin or these performers from a very early period, the way that they performed.
Abbott and Costello, they were a ridiculous comedy team, but they made serious horror films. These influenced me. That you could have stupid business going on while death is
yo, I'm telling you, he looks like that guy.
beating down the door.
If you've seen my Kendrick video, you know that one lens I like to use to view an artist's growth is this metaphor of climbing the mountain, which illustrates how one must focus on both study and practice in order to maximize improvement. But there's another more popular metaphor that aligns quite well with this one that I find very relevant to talk about here. It's Ira Glass's closing the gap metaphor. You heard of this one? Only some of you?
Jeez. Guess I'm just gonna have to cook.
All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to make TV because you love TV. You know what I mean? Because there's stuff that you just, like, love, but it's like there's a gap. That for the first couple years that you're making stuff, what you're making isn't so good, okay? It's not that great. It's trying to be good. It has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste is still killer. And your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you. A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. You got to know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you could do is do a lot of work. Do a huge volume of work. Put yourself on a deadline. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your ambitions.
And it's true.
I guess the guy is gonna say it's true. When I first heard that Ira Glass analogy of closing the gap, I think I was in college and I was trying to become a music producer. And it was so encouraging to actually hear that because I think it makes it make sense. Like the work that you're doing. And it can be applied to anything that you're doing, that you have where you are and where you're trying to go. You have where you are and where you're trying to go. And there is this huge gap in between. So like for me at the time, it was about music production. And I would have the music that I would try to produce and make and stuff like that. And I would listen to it. Maybe I would enjoy it. And then I would compare it to favorite producers. Like Jay Dilla is one of my favorite producers. Like you listen to it and you compare it and it's like, oh yeah, my stuff is trash. It's really, really bad. But you practice, like the guy was saying, like that. These are good analogies. I love stuff like this. It's actually very inspiring and very encouraging because I think the creative journey or developing as a creative is, or a creative person is such a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's very fun to me. Sorry, it's very touches the heart. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm having a moment in my mind, just thinking about that, just that journey, because usually in that space like Ira Glass was saying, in that space of the gap, when you're trying to grow from where you are currently to where you want to be, a lot of people give up, a lot of people quit. And it's not only because of how you feel, like your own perspective or perception of the stuff that you're creating. It's also the opinions and perspectives of those around you. And it can be devastating for a lot of creative people, um, or people who just have dreams or aspirations when they're not surrounded by the right community, um, or they don't have the strong enough like drive inside of them to make it through that gap. You can still be going through it. Like even if you're getting to a level of success based off of however you define success, you're always going to be striving to be better, you know. And if you get to a point or get to a place where you feel like, oh, there's nothing else to strive for, that's usually when people feel like they need to retire because it's like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. It's nothing to aspire for. There's no joy. And you kind of check out. But even when people are at an excellent or proficient level, they still want to get better. Like they still want to get better. They still have things to aspire for, things that they want to accomplish, um, and see like completed. And so yeah, this idea of the gap. I like this video. I really got to try to finish it, but I like this video. I like that it's covering these different aspects because it's true. Like in this creative journey, and that again, this doesn't have to only be for like this guy is painting or doing like calligraphy work. It doesn't have to be for just creative arts per se. I think can be creative with anything that they're doing. So if you're a doctor, you can be creative. If you're um, a lawyer, you can be creative. Whatever your field is, it takes creativity to accomplish what you're doing. Engineer, you definitely have to be creative. And there is this gap that you're working to try to close the gap to become better and better at what you're doing. And we all need creativity in our lives. And that journey of trying to progress and get better is nonstop. It's kind of like the journey of life every day. We have the opportunity to try to get better every day in different ways. So I don't know. I think that's beautiful. I love this stuff. All right, let's keep going.
Any artist that you admire for their wonderful art has made a high volume of lesser art in order to get to those miracles. It's once again like this image of the plate juggler that I mentioned before. This is the war of art, a subject that many artists have spoken about. Iterate, iterate, iterate. I believe it's precisely for these reasons that Mr. Dilworth is so consistent with his answer when everyone asks him what led him to animation.
So, John, how did you get into animation?
With a pencil.
So, how did you design? I mean,
With a pencil, man.
well, I mean, how did you?
What made you get into animation? A pencil. Did anything like inspire you to like, just get in there?
How did you get into animation, even during your youth?
Well, it all started with a pencil, John. Pencil. I think it was a number 2.
You might think he's trolling, and he definitely is aware that he's like being kind of silly, but there's something very real that he's getting at.
Tell us how it started.
Oh, I don't want to occupy too much time on these details. The courage was really started with, seriously, one of these.
Yeah.
Right, so anybody can do it.
So an artist, like John for example, starts out with her pencil and begins making things over and over for years, refining not just their skills, but their ideas too. So John started out with some pretty wild stuff.
Fungus, do you have belly blow?
At this stage in his career, John often reflects on the evolution of recurring character types in his work.
Was it always meant to be an elderly couple and a dog, or?
Oh, yeah. There's always a 3, for instance. A female of some higher intelligence, but that's off somehow. A very unsympathetic male character. And then this third, innocent.
It's really interesting that something in his soul always wanted to get these ideas out. Thankfully, he iterated throughout the years to eventually get his skills and ideas refined enough to the point to make courage.
You know that short.
I think that's so. I love that. Again, I love hearing these kind of stories because it's true. When we see people who have get to this level of success or whatever, particularly in the creative spaces, we don't always know how long they've had those ideas. And as those aspiring to accomplish anything, I feel like the first idea that we have, we kind of want it to be the success. It's like, oh, I have this great idea for a movie, or I have this great idea for a novel or a story. And if you do the hard work to even accomplish it the first time, so you make your first short film or you create your first short story, it's almost like, I want this to be my big break. That's usually not how it works, like you might end up making the same movie over and over and over again until you get to the place where you can actually accomplish it the way you want to accomplish it. same song over and over and over again for a musician or songwriter or a novelist. Like you have a big idea and you just have to keep working at it and making iterations of it. Sometimes iterations of it to get to like, oh no, I've been thinking about this story for 20 years. Oh no, I've been working on this song for like 10 years. And I think that's beautiful because it goes back to the idea of, a lot of times people can consider some artists, especially in like the YouTube and the internet space, overnight successes. We don't realize that somebody can been singing the same song or creating the same type of videos over and over and over again to get to where they are. Like today, a YouTuber that I really like to watch is Corey Kinship. Let me pull him up. Let me shout out Corey. I mean, he doesn't really need it. Doesn't need any more. Like, will this work like this? He doesn't need any more publicity because he's super famous. He has over 21 million subscribers with Corey Kinship. So, like, if you go to his videos, right, this is 3 weeks ago, but he's been making videos for 15 years. For 15 years. And it's just crazy how much he's grown. And this seeing stuff like this or hearing about this guy and the fact that it started with a number 2 pencil, like that journey is encouraging and personally re-inspiring to me that like, yeah, it may take a while, but if you stick with it and you keep refining it and you keep growing and you keep closing the gap, whatever version of success that you're looking for or whatever version of success that's out there for you, it's gonna come to you. So like even with me, and this is something that I've wrestled with and I've had challenging conversations with my wife and with my friends about, with me and making music and doing some other stuff. Um, at some point, I kind of just gave it up. But there was a period of time, from a window of like 2 or 3 years, where I was actually getting kind of good. I was getting better. Um, but I think in the process of closing that gap, I hit roadblocks that kind of discouraged me. And I'm trying to reclaim that creativity again so that I can get back to doing things that are inspiring to me. This video is going to have some clips in it because I don't, I'm talking about a lot of other stuff outside of Courage the Cowardly Dog. But yeah, like in that, again, in the midst of closing that gap for where you are and the things that you're making that feels like crap, and then the good stuff that you admire and see in other people, that in between space can be very tumultuous. And I know for me, it's been that way. And again, to hear these kind of stories, whether it's John R. Dilworth or even Corey Kenshin, pull it back up, making videos for over 15 years, you know, to get to the place where he's one of the top content creators on YouTube, over 21 million subscribers. Like, it's ridiculous. And then this guy, like, creating a show that, sure, traumatized kids for a whole generation, but it's also created a legacy that I'm sure has gone beyond his whatever he fathomed. And I just think that's amazing.
Informed Courage. It's an early version of Eustace, Uriel, and Courage. You could see the evolution of Hamilton in Courage. Hamilton was a more introverted character, much more sensitive, but Courage is more active now. He evolved to action despite fear.
So it is through this continuous learning and iteration that one not only climbs the mountain of artistic ability, but closes the gap between the amazing ideas in their mind and the actual things that said artistic ability allows them to create. You climb the mountain to close the gap. It's an infinite game with an infinite prize of having more and more effectiveness in bringing your ideas to life.
Do you feel like you wrote your best verse yet?
My best verse yet? Nope.
Damn.
Nope. I'm always searching for that. Always.
See, didn't I just say this? Didn't I just say this? Like, clearly, like, you have people at the top of their games, or what people would say they're the best or the goats in this situation, and he's still saying, no, I got to keep going.
searching for that next thing that, inspired me within writing. It could be another word, it could be another concept, another song, another album, but it's just a challenge. It's just a search to write that perfect verse or that perfect song.
God damn it, art is cool. And thus, John R. Dilworth became a fully evolved Pokemon and was now ready to take his big idea to the big networks.
I went to the studios, pitched my cartoon idea in my spacesuit. I'm going to reenact my successful pitch to the Cartoon Network. It's called Courage the Cowardly Dog, and it's about an orphan dog rescued by a nice old lady, Muriel Bad, who lives with her farmer in the Shut up! Sit down! But creepy things happen in nowhere, and it's up to Courage to save the farm!
But given the approval of the concept, now it came time for execution, and in order to do that, John needed the Avengers to assemble. Okay, voice actors. What does this little dog sound like anyway? John searched tirelessly through everyone in New York City, but nothing was clicking. Hope was looking dim. Enter Marty Grabstein.
John Dilworth, he's developing this new show called Courage the Cowardly Dog. He's listened to every voiceover artist in the city and can't seem to arrive at a decision. Over 300 voices. I went in and just somehow went with my instinctive interpretation of what this character might be sounding like, and he fell in love with it. I am convinced that John was not sure exactly how Courage was supposed to sound until I came in. And he goes, that was really funny, but okay, how about this, Marty? Try it where you take your natural, ridiculously gravelly, scratchy voice and pitch it up here like this. Go like that. And I said, okay. And he goes, that's it.
I do think Marty's voice ended up perfect for the show.
Oh no, not more.
And after consuming all 102 episodes with my eyeballs pressed against the monitor and volume on full blast, I do agree with her decision to actually reduce Courage's dialogue after about halfway through season 1.
I think we did maybe 6 episodes before Mike Lazo suggested that we should do without it. And I agreed, because in the original short film, Courage did not speak. But doing a series, it's scary to think that you're going to rely on a star that doesn't say anything, I mean, it was a good move.
I think so too. Well, I do like these little moments where Courage is saying something, like, for example, in the first few episodes, I like this running joke of,
I have a bad feeling about this. My name is Ivana, and it's not. Something smells fishy, or my name's Schlinkenhopper. And it's not. Oh, there's something wrong here. Or my name is Jose Santos de Guatemala. And it's not.
And I don't even mind this episode where he's having a full-on therapy session with the Shadow, but I think the bulk of the episodes function fantastically with action speaking louder than words. And in that way, it makes it a very unique show that your main character can't talk most of the time. He'll still chime in and say something every now and then.
Oh no, what do I do? What do I do?
But I think used sparingly, it's actually much more effective. It all comes back to what John was inspired by to make art in the first place, and now he wanted to take that inspiration and put it back into his own thing.
What I wanted him to do was be more like a Charlie Chaplin and use his body as language.
Letting the events themselves play out with just a bit of dialogue from Muriel, Eustace, or that episode's villain works phenomenally. Speaking of villains, as we've mentioned before, your heroes can only shine as bright as the villains are dark. And so we're going to need some killer voices on board for them too. Enter Paul Scheffler.
Well, I went into an audition at Don Case and they were looking for the character.
This is so much bigger than I thought. I'm loving this. I'm loving this. Shout out again to Level 1 Rock. I'm going to have to put a link to this in the description. Hold on, let me go ahead and give this a like, because this is good. I like this.
Cats, which was this really like sophisticated looking character, and I thought maybe I'll try the voice of James Mason for this character. It felt right. And if anyone knows, there's an old British actor who used to talk like this. He had a very beautiful voice like this,
Has anyone ever told you that you overplay your various roles rather severely, Mr. Kaplan?
I'm quite tired of second place. Second place is no place.
Yeah, Cats is
John cast me on the basis of that, and so I came in and did the episode, and I thought, well, that was great. That was fun.
So Paul was pretty much every other freaking voice on the show. He's a jack of all trades.
And while we're at it, we're going to need some killer themes for these villains too. We need some scary music to help set the tone every time they enter a scene or when they're doing something insane.
I'm going to experiment on you with some of my newest products.
Sean, he would come in and he'd say, I kind of like this here, I kind of like the sound here, but he would always accompany by, oh. He was so excitable, he was so hilarious. He would often describe a feeling rather than a kind of music. He'd say, I want this to be like really dark, man, really dark and scary, really scary.
The network is going to order a bunch of episodes to air, so we need to bring in some talented writers who can tune their frequency to John's vision and then write for it as if it's their own.
I believe the primary element to all of this is writing, being able to communicate the story, whatever the story.
That's really cool. Like, that must be such a magical thing to be able to create something, to have an idea, and then to have a team of people come around and help bring that idea into fruition. That's beautiful. Like, I really enjoy that. I've had the opportunity to work on projects with other people. When somebody has an idea and then all the pieces come together to produce this bigger thing is always the collaboration, the synergy, whatever you want to call it. Like, that is such a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's amazing.
Enter David Stephen Cohen.
It was very much me getting in sync with how John was twisting things, and I was becoming happily twisted.
Shout out to the What's in My Head podcast for landing interviews with so many of these artists and producers. Their conversations very much helped my research and has resultantly improved the quality of this video. So go check them out for a whole lot more interviews of creators of these shows from the same golden era that we're talking about here. And in my eyes, one of the most important people involved in the show as a producer is Linda Semensky. I believe Linda is a shining example of what a film producer should be, as she ultimately stands for all the things that will benefit the art first and foremost.
Like a book editor. My job was to do the best possible version of of this person's idea. I was helping them to do it by just basically looking out for them back at the network and explaining the goals of the network to the people at the show.
In the business of art, there's an infinite push and pull between the two. You want to maximize artistic quality, and you have to deliver things on time to make money. And neither would thrive without the other. There must be a balance. But it really can feel like a constant back and forth between the business and the creative.
Because I wanted to do the opposite of what everyone before me had done. You know, it's like you read all these stories about, you know, how tough the executives were. And I always thought, well, I'm just going to be on the side of the animators because that seems like the winning approach. You know, I always felt like, you know, I was there to defend the people making the cartoons, and I was happy to do that.
9-second applause.
It takes a skill.
I think that's beautiful. Like, again, people, I think sometimes we have a limited understanding of what creativity is, or how creativity should be expressed or put on display. Like, even her role as a producer, handling like the business side of it, is so necessary. And I'm sure she had to be like, sure in this talk she was going to reference it. Like, she has to do something creative. She has to show up to serve, again, this vision or this idea of what's being produced. And it's so necessary, even though she may not draw, she may not sing, she may not do anything considered artsy, but she has to be creative. That's amazing.
Producer like Linda who knows when to get things done and when to remind ourselves that in fact a deadline is just a made-up date on a calendar, and that at the end of the day nobody really cares that your thing came out X days or weeks late. The only thing that really matters is if they'll look back on it fondly for the rest of time.
And I always used to joke around about all the shows and say, I don't think they give prizes for best on time schedule. You know, I think it really all comes down to, will they stand the test of time? And if they need a little extra time to do that, we can do that.
When a piece of art is great, nobody will give a flying if it came out a few days late. Don't believe me? You know I'm a huge Kendrick Lamar fan. When he came out with The Heart Part 4 just before his 2017 album Damn, he epically ended the song with,
Y'all got too late with the 17, get your shit together.
implying that that's exactly when the album would drop. It was so hype, and he did the same thing with The Heart Part 3 just before Good Kid Mad City.
When you lay hip hop die, you're not over 20 seconds.
But guess what? This time in 2017, just before Damn, he actually pushed it back a week. Damn actually came out on April 14th, 2017. How could the great and powerful Kendrick Lamar go against his word? He prophesized the date. How could he push it back a week? Because here we are 7 years later, and no one remembers that it got pushed back a week, but everyone remembers that Damn was an amazing album, and it still is to this day. So Linda's 100% right. When art is published, it is immortalized as it is forever. So do it right, even if it takes the extra few days, to make sure that the way that it is forever is something that you're really proud of. You're doing the Lord's work, Linda. Good. Seriously, this woman is one of the guiding forces behind this golden era I talked about growing up with.
When I look at your resume, everything you worked on was hit after hit after hit after hit after hit.
Hit after hit after hit is right. And they even paid tribute to her with a sitar that she played. They have Muriel playing it in several scenes throughout the show.
Oh, sweet.
So now that we've met some of the key figures behind the scenes that made Courage a reality, now it's time to meet the key figures in the scenes that made Courage horrifying. Villains are the most important thing in a horror show, right? Even if not people, but supernatural forces, there has to be some force that brings about darkness on the main cast, and Courage has tons of them. This show is a goldmine of villains. The one that most fans will be quick to recognize and recall is undoubtedly King Ramses.
That's so funny. I mean, it's true. I think it's very true. That's funny. I know a lot of people don't like that episode. But it's so, I don't know. To me, King Ramses, like, I like the song. I'm sure they'll reference it. But it was cheesy. Like, him as a villain and the way they depicted him was so cheesy, but it was just hilarious.
Ramses' curse. It did immediately remind me of how scared I was when I first watched this episode. It was extremely unnerving. And I'm not alone either. 22 years later, this is still one of the most talked about horror moments in all of kids programming.
What?
In the slab, oh, suffer my curse.
Yo, this shit, that's so wild to me.
Ramses curse thing, right? That one, just based on my experience with the convention people, that almost everybody, that is their favorite episode. I think a lot of it really has to do with the simplicity of this three-dimensional image in a two-dimensional world. And that was Dilworth, by the way, right?
Yeah. Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
What makes this episode go from good to great is the elevation from horror to horror comedy. Because as horrific as King Ramses is, it really is the unbothered, greedy reply from Eustace that is the cherry on top.
What's your offer?
Because faced with the threat of not one, not two, but 3 plagues, this man will negotiate with supernatural beings over some cash.
What's your offer?
Which, as this comment points out, is actually a really polite thing to do. Like, he doesn't have to give Eustace this heads up, but he does. What a gentleman. So I think King Ramses is definitely the most recognizable, the most remembered, but the darkest, the most sinister. For lack of a better term, the most...
This one's good, but wait, let me go back.
As this comment points out, is actually a really polite thing to do. Like, he
That's creepy.
doesn't have
Ugh. I don't like that. Like that, yeah. This, if this is what it looked like, I would agree. This would be really, I don't like that.
Just this heads up, but he does. What a gentleman. So I think King Ramses is definitely the most recognizable and most remembered, but the darkest, the most sinister, for lack of a better term, the most f***ed up villain has got to be Freaky Fred.
Is there any episodes or characters that stand out to you both as being, what you would imagine would have been someone's scariest episode?
Freaky Fred. I read so many things, and people said so many things. People have contacted me and said that you scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid. And I think that was a real risk for them to do that character.
In my book, Freaky Fred is second to none. This episode is cursed. The devil is in the details. Through this demonic poem, we learn about the life of abuse that Fred has conducted, while our poor dog is trapped inside of the bathroom.
It was a day I can't forget. The day that I first met my pet.
Keep in mind, all this narration we're hearing from Fred are the words inside his head. He says that at the beginning.
Hello, new friend. My name is Fred. The words you hear are in my head.
I wrote Freaky Fred with a friend of mine who I met while working on Seuss, Bill Marsilli, and he wrote King Ramses. He's a wonderful writer. I do have an affection for Fred because it's in verse. I mean, I remember walking with John Dilworth, and he said, I want to do an episode about a freaky barber, evocative of Sweeney Todd, certainly. I don't remember if he brought up Sweeney Todd at the time, but he said, I'd like to do it in verse.
And oh, such fuzz, it does demand.
He tells us about his pet that he couldn't help but shave.
That I be naughty.
This girl Barbara that he couldn't help but shave.
Barbara, my love was named, and her fair hair are mane untamed.
And then this older man that he couldn't help but shave. This is dark art, okay?
Some of those episodes were very dark. Some were frothy, but some really twisted.
Not only is he reciting in his head this dark poem that sounds like if Dr. Seuss and Edgar Allan Poe made a baby, it's his constant smiling throughout the episode. He twirls before he shaves the last bit of hair on the Courage's bum, even when he gets taken away at the end, presumably back to some mental facility.
With love, Fred.
As if nothing wrong was done. This is one of those episodes where there just is no resolution. It's just like some dark shit happens and then it ends. Like, diabolical. Diabolical synonym, please, because I can't keep saying that. Diabolical cinnamon. Fiendish, satanic, hellish, wicked. Yeah, wicked, unholy. Just 11 minutes of some unholy madness, thanks to Fred. And then there's Dilworth's favorite villain, the one who set the tone with the very first episode, Katz.
Welcome to the Katz Motel. I'm Katz.
Katz is such a diabolical I see, there it is again. Katz is a pretty satanic fellow. The way he splits the family up and makes sure that they are so by peeping through his paintings and shower heads, only so that he can feed them to his mutant.
Okay, so this may be an episode that I really didn't like, but I don't like spiders.
Spiders.
There were notes from time to time, but my favorite note, which didn't come from Linda, it came from Standards and Practices. It's room 666. Right?
Yeah.
And the note was, we're going to get complaints, so can you just change the number? I made it 666 and a half.
I knew it.
And it was fine.
When it's time for Courage to confront Katz himself, there's only one way to resolve the conflict. Games.
One of my favorite things about the show was when they come to the head of a confrontation, then they do something like they salsa dance or something, or they get in an intense game of badminton or something, or...
Right, so how do you resolve conflict? Think back as a child. Would be games.
This is true.
Yeah, so it's just a formula.
Yeah.
It's a formula of mine to resolve conflict, not with violence.
Actually think about it that way, though, when you were creating it, were you I'm going to play it on my childhood, or No,
not me specifically, but it was deliberate to use childhood games and play to resolve conflict as a contradiction to the adult world of aggressive dominance, right? The stronger prevails, the most brutal prevails. Yeah, that's going to happen anyway, right? But to defeat somebody in checkers, it's humiliating.
Katz is a repeat villain. I think it's for good reason. He is one of the best villains.
Welcome to Club Katz. I'm Katz.
But on Club Katz, he's not feeding them to spiders. Now he's up to something else.
Now I'm up to something.
Terrible things happen here.
Who's Katz putting on this entertainment for?
Tonight, for your enjoyment, Eustace the Wrecking Ball.
There is no crowd. He just has an applause machine. Why did he mastermind this whole new club to put this performance on? Is he mad? So off the top, those are some of the most horrifying villains, but there's other flavors of them too. Like I said, this show is a goldmine of them. One of the funniest is Schwick.
Name's Bushwick. But call me Schwick. Just Schwick. Don't ever call me Bushwick. Where are you from? Bushwick. You can call that Bushwick, but not me. Me, you call Schwick. Just Schwick.
LeQuack is pretty funny too, and he's another repeat villain. Qu'est-ce que c'est? The Goose God is very funny. And then I'll throw Cajun Fox in there too. I love his sunglasses, and especially when he takes them off. Cajun Fox is just a cool guy.
Hey man, how you doing?
And who could forget Shirley the Medium, another fantastic recurring character in this universe. The way she helps Eustace contact his dead brother.
Just tell my dead brother and shut up.
Join hands.
He's so mean to everybody.
That's just brilliant. Extra points to Shirley for always referring to Eustace as the stupid one.
The stupid one. He's stupid, right?
And what's this eye she has anyway? You know, it's a little different. It's not like a Sharingan or a Rinnegan. Call that the Shirleygan. The Chicken from Outer Space is a classic because it's the one that started it all. In the self-titled short film that was Oscar nominated, this would be what became. Courage Revenge of the Chicken from Outer Space is crazy because the chicken is cooked. It's literally cooked and it came back to destroy Courage. It took Eustace's head off and put it on itself. I personally hated blood-sucking stuff growing up, so seeing the evil Weevil was wild. Watching how nimble and skeletal Muriel and Eustace are after the Weevil sucks most of their blood out, it's pretty scarring. Look at this. This man has been reduced to a small puddle in a bag, and it's not even the first episode something like that has happened. Which reminds me of the Snowman. The Snowman is another one of the funniest villains. He gets a couple episodes, rightfully so.
And
I wonder if he's gonna talk about that.
He was a ton of snow.
You gotta throw some appreciation to Benton Tarantella. He appears in Everybody Wants to Direct, and then again in Angry Nasty People. And then I think there's just like one annoying character in the whole show, and it's this guy. And they definitely made him that way on purpose. But he does offer some really good moments like this one. I bet you can.
He reminds me of Khan from King of the Hill. Pull it up for those who may not know. I want to get back to that. Hi there, the source of walls. I'm gonna get back to you on that and pull this up before I forget. Let's see. Yeah, he reminds me of Khan. This guy, just like his demeanor, and I think even just the way that he treats Courage. Like Khan is always looking down on Hank and the rest of the cast or crew of King of the Hill, and I feel like this guy is the same way. Okay, so the source of walls asked a long time, just as how does a late night stream work for you? I don't know. I'm still, to be honest, I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, I'm adapting to it. I think this might be my second time doing it, and I intend to stream earlier, but it never works out that way. I'm still working on picking a good time because I need to find a good time that works for me and that also works for you all. But thank you for asking. Thank you for those again who are here watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying the stream. All right, here we go. Let's keep going. Gotta wrap this up because I got my deadline coming up real fast.
Think of at least a few guys that are unironically like this in real life.
I only had a nickel. Now I own 3 apartment buildings and a fleet of limousines.
Here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here. Fun to drive up here in the Hollywood Hills.
Wait!
All you have to do to learn the secret of my success is send me money.
And there's a couple more key villains that we'll pay a visit to later, but the last one that I'd like to mention for now is the Puppet Master, the Magician, the Great Fusili. This guy in this episode are special for a few reasons. It's one of those episodes where the conflict is actually not resolved. There's no happy ending. This episode is the root of a popular fan theory, that this twisted ending from the season 1 finale is what actually is the rest of Courage's existence in the following 3 seasons. It's like Sasori and Naruto, whose parents have passed but have been turned into puppets, playing pretend that they're still alive to love him. And while we're talking fan theories, we have to address one of the most popular ones besides this, that this entire show is an exaggeration of reality, that Courage has an overactive imagination due to anxiety or perhaps schizophrenia, and that it's all just in Courage's head. We'll get into these theories a bit more in chapter 6, which is all about art and the interpretation of it, but for now I'll just say that the most important thing is how art makes you feel. So if either of these theories or any other ones that you can think of make you feel something greater, then go with it. That's like the whole point. There's tons of department that go into filmmaking, but there's one that really stands out with this show in particular, and for that reason, it deserves its own chapter. Believe it or not, even though we have long called them pictures or motion pictures, audio is actually the backbone to cinema. Real ones know.
Absolutely.
I think that's why you can watch, air quotes, watch, from the other side of the room while you're cooking dinner or while you're eating dinner or on your second monitor while you're playing Brotato. You get a lot of the key information from sound alone. The music sets the tone, the dialogue conveys the information, and sound effects fill in the details. What's exceptionally notable about Courage the Cowardly Dog soundtrack is that so much of it is original.
We wrote pretty much a different theme for every single villain.
That's insane.
You know, because it's like, people do that. You know, so it was extra work. We didn't really care. We just wanted it to be cool.
Reminds me how all the major villains in Naruto had musical themes, which was very effective in conveying their powerful dark presences. A lot of these themes have millions of views just because they're so iconic in and of themselves. Shout out to Pain. He was a perfect villain.
He was a ton of snow.
For any Naruto fans out there, people that just notice how much I reference Naruto, don't worry. We'll get there one day. That one's going to be a big video. Even bigger than Crisis Catastrophe and SpongeBob.
Are you going to be able to handle that? I hope so, because it's coming.
One of the first examples that comes to mind in speaking about exceptional music in the show is Human Habit Trail. You know what Habit Trail is? I didn't, and I had 4 gerbils growing up. Well, it's a pretty fucked up episode. Dr. Gerbil is an actual maniac.
Yeah, he was great.
Figure. But in the climax of this episode, there's a chase scene with Courage and the Doc.
Yes.
This inspired choice to actually
so
mute all of the sounds except the music. It completely subverts our expectations and makes a really beautiful scene.
And John was constantly wanting us to do cinematic stuff and stuff that was different.
Bringing it back to Freaky Fred, his music was actually so psychedelically disturbing that it's intoxicating.
Yeah.
I love when a fan base comes together. It's a lot like how Bikini Bottom came together in Band Geeks, another episode with a fan-made reanimation. Haha. Fans are awesome because they make the best creators, if you ask me. I say that to say you don't want any mega moron executives that stare at spreadsheets all day trying to min-max and calculate what best thing they should make to make the most money. You want fans, people that are fans of great art, people that appreciate great art to be the ones making it. And I believe it's for those reasons that Dilworth and his team felt compelled to make such innovative decisions, and that led to the show being as iconic as it is today. So there was a lot of fantastic original music in the show, but when they did use music that was not original, they were very tasteful in which songs they selected. Like, they used the Ode to Joy in this episode. Are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah.
Actually, maybe that was one of the original ones. I can't believe Courage the Cowardly Dog invented the Ode to Joy. And of course, we arrive at arguably the most significant musically themed episode in the Tower of Dr. Jalost. Another fan favorite.
The one that's the most effective one for me, haunting anyone, is the Tower of Dr. Jalost. I really, really like that score. It's very, very integrated into the show. I'm using the same theme every time, and then at the end, it becomes very major. And a lot of fans love that show. They constantly write.
Yeah, that's a 2-part episode.
They went fully cinematic with this one.
That
That's
was
for
a
sure.
good episode. I love that episode.
In both the Tower of Dr. Zelost and Curtain of Cruelty, Eustace is the only one in the world that it has no effect on.
He must be immune to emotions.
That is a hilarious detail.
I'm a lousy storyteller, but somehow I find some emotional components that I grab onto.
While Dilworth may think he's a lousy storyteller and everything about film school will teach you that story is king, editing legend Walter Murch agrees that emotion is actually the only thing that overtakes it in terms of importance. It's a highly recommended book for any editors out there, just filmmakers in general out there, art appreciators out there. Get the book In the Blink of an Eye by Walter Murch. As an editor, he comes up with a list of priorities, and at the very top of that list is the emotion. And his reasoning is, when people walk out of the theater, what they're going to remember above all, even above what happened in the story, is what they felt. That's the number one thing that people remember about any film, or arguably about any piece of art.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the case for even relationships and how people interact with one another. Like, what is it? Maya Angelou? I think it might be Maya Angelou. I can be wrong. I'm probably wrong. Let me see if I can look up this quote real quick. Hold on. And I might have to end this short because I don't want to go over my deadline. And I was correct. It's Maya Angelou. And the quote is, hold up again. The quote is, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that's true, even for art. Like, good art makes you feel something. So even though you may have something that is like a earworm or something like that, the songs that are super indelible, I don't want ads. The things that are going to be super impactful to you are the ones that make you feel. And again, feeling is different for different people, you know? And I think long-lasting or super impactful songs are the ones that have made lots of people feel lots of things. So, yeah. All right, we're going to keep going just for a little bit longer. I might not be able to finish this because I got a hard stop because I got to get off this thing. But again, thank you all for joining me. Let's see how much we can see in the next 10 minutes. I don't know.
How it made them feel. Remember how Jody said that John would always describe a feeling when talking about what music he wanted?
He would often describe a feeling.
Well, Christopher Nolan did that exact thing with Hans Zimmer when working on Interstellar.
He wouldn't tell me what the movie was about. I
Hans
sat down and I
Zimmer
wanted
is
a
a
piece
beast.
about what it feels like to be a father.
I thought it was absolutely perfect and captured the emotional qualities of the film I wanted. I think what that did is set him very firmly in a direction relating to the heart of the film.
At the end of the day, all these different people, all these different departments that are contributing to an art piece, it all just adds up to create an effect on the viewer or an emotion.
The most important thing is the effect upon the viewer.
They really had no business making the show go this hard in the yard. They could have turned in some crap and called it a day, but instead they went the extra mile of crafting so many original songs just so that it was well tailored to the episodes they were working on. And it's all because they wanted to continue that beautiful cycle of inspiration.
And that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that there would be shows that people would like as much as I liked Bugs Bunny when I was growing up.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, but what does it all mean anyway? It's all just a bunch of colors and voices, just a bunch of sounds and images, just a bunch of bullshit on the TV, am I right? It doesn't mean anything, just a bunch of bullshit, am I right? We're gonna look at Courage through the lens of open interpretation, because that's the beauty in art, especially art that frequently uses abstract symbolism. I mean, that's the whole game of subjectivity, using symbols that might carry inherent meaning and putting them in a scene that evokes an emotion, likely causing the human being to derive meaning from it. And it's not just me that's saying this is the way that the creator of this art wishes for the world to see it as well.
Art is for interpreting. I know what my show is about, but I'm not going to tell you. You give it the meaning that means something to you.
I 1000% agree here. If Dilworth or any other creators were to come on some interview and tell us, oh yeah, the rest of the show is Courage controlling the puppets. Oh yeah, the whole show is in Courage's head. Well, then the whole imagination and guessing game is over.
In mass,
Yeah,
what do they like?
that's
Were the
true.
rabbits and why remove the clothing of a beautiful thing?
Okay, so you're not going to answer it?
What's the point then of trying to decipher true meaning or unintentional meaning in a thing?
So you rather leave it open for interpretation?
Art is that.
The whole point of art is that it gets your feelings going, gets your imagination going, and that's the effect that it has on the viewer. Take Courage in the Big Stinking City, for example. There's a lot of teasing and build up to what's behind that door.
You want to know what's behind that door? You
Oh,
don't want to
yeah.
know what's behind that door.
And although we learn it eats everything off a person but their bones, and we get to hear it slur for a second, we never actually see what it is. And once again, if the creators of the show were to tell us that, oh yeah, that's an alien, or oh yeah, that's another bug just like Schwick, well then that defeats the whole guessing game. It defeats the whole magic of imagining what might be back there. Rather than connecting those dots for us, it gives us one dot and allows our imagination to finish the connection. This is how some forms of therapy work. Look, they literally do this in an episode. Eustace connects the dots with what's in his head, and Muriel connects the dots with what's in hers.
I see a beautiful butterfly who only wants to make her husband happy.
Boom.
I see a woman hitting a guy on the head with a frying pan.
I'm not just making shit up. I actually mean what I say. I think a lot of great artists see things this way. The BoJack Horseman creator feels the same about how fans interpret the last episodes of his show. It's useless to try to control people's perceptions. It's so much better to just go with the flow of the subjective perspectives of interpretation by using things like symbols and double or triple entendres. Artists love using things that carry inherent meanings and multiple meanings. It's good for the art experience.
That's what he did there. That's what he did there with Euphoria. I saw that. That was good.
So now we understand that John's meaning that has resonated with him during the creation of this art can coexist with someone else's personal experiences and interpretations with the same art, and so on with mine and yours and the rest.
There's all these fan theories about how nowhere is like either purgatory or hell or something.
Oh, I get so many of those. I love them all. I love them all. I'm not going to become a stuffed shirt and tell somebody their theory is wrong. They're all correct. Who's to say you can't look at artwork and say, this is it?
So in talking about symbols, what am I talking about? I'm talking about Courage plunging into the darkness in Queen of the Black Puddle. That's a great metaphoric example. Meaning types will love this one. Oh my god, do we love a good set of abstract symbolism to derive meaning out of. Oh, I'm going to derive meaning out of this art so hard. What about this blonde girl playing the violin?
Oh, yeah.
In terms of subjective interpretations, it's now time to talk about heads of beef, which is a great example to explore that it was all in Courage's head theory. Because this episode is really like that. Courage gets a bad feeling from this place and this pig, and when a customer disappears, Courage starts to think that they took him, and maybe even ate him. Courage connects the dots to those in his head, and comes with this narrative that these must be cannibals. But in this case, Courage is actually wrong. Because by the time we reach the end of the episode, we learn that this time it truly was just all in his head.
I would love to feature your work at my gallery of culinary wonders.
He invents a whole conflict where he needs to plunge into the darkness, when this time he actually didn't even have to do it after all. Courage was perceiving things in a way that was immediately flavored with fear, conflating it with everything else that happens all the time at the farmhouse. And if you do subscribe to this theory, I would go as far as to say that you should look at this as the prime example for your theory. You could say that this episode is a peek into the real world as it truly is, where we aren't so submerged into Courage's viewpoint as to see things that aren't real, but rather see things as they really are for a change. If you get more out of the show by looking at it through that lens, then why not? Whatever invokes a greater feeling for you is probably what you should go with.
Art is that.
And what invokes the greatest feeling for me is plunging into the darkness. So while we've explored almost all of the story's key villains, there's one more very important one that we need to understand. Arguably the biggest and inarguably the most consistent villain throughout the entire show, Eustace. For most of the show, Eustace barely ever calls Courage by his name. To us, Courage is the main character. To Eustace, he's just a stupid dog.
Stupid dog!
One that Muriel shouldn't have saved. But why is he like this?
I explored hate through the persona of Eustace, but then I also offered potential reasons for the source of that hate.
The older you get, the more you come to understand that behind that scary old face, there's a broken man underneath.
Can I come hunting with you? No. Please, big brother. No.
Yeah,
Perhaps even deep within a broken child. In The Sand Whale Strikes, we see Eustace's mom wish to give up her son's life and his wife's in order to get the sand whale's prize money.
You know how much a sand whale is worth?
Yo.
Keep me stupid son and his stupid wife. Now,
So now we know that that's probably where his unending greed and fixation on money over family comes from. In the Mother's Day episode, Eustace's mom hates all of the gifts that he brings her, except for the mirror in the photo. His mom has always been obsessed with her looks. And when his mom gives Eustace's gift to Courage, his inner child starts to peek out.
That's mine. Why don't you ever give me any presents?
She never gave him anything. He's always felt neglected and continues to feel so. Eustace was verbally and emotionally abused by his mom,
your pa was a real man. You can't fill his shoes.
by his older brother,
I wish they showed it.
Useless.
and he fell into the negative momentum of continuing that cycle of abuse to the next generation, even if it isn't onto his kid, but onto his dog. Being victim to one is an incredibly difficult position to be in, and therefore one of the most difficult decisions in life, to bear such a brutal suffering and still to choose light over dark. They say that that's the only difference between heroes and villains.
Villains and heroes actually have the exact same backstory. Both the villain story and the backstory of the hero are pain. So the difference between the villain and the hero is one thing: it's how they respond to pain. The world hurt me, I'm going to hurt it back. And the hero says, the world hurt me, I'm not going to let this happen to anybody else.
Wow.
It's just literally how you decide to react to pain that either turns you into the victim or turns you into the hero.
One continues that cycle and one breaks it. This is why albums like Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers are so important and so timeless, I predict. It's about breaking cycles of pain and hatred and abuse to create more peaceful lives in generations future. We're getting closer to the source, you guys. Let's proceed even deeper. In McPherson Phantom, I think one of the most important episodes in the whole show, we see her team up with a literal phantom to manipulate her son into believing his wife Muriel is treating him badly, specifically to separate
I might push this to the end just to wrap it up.
them. That's what level she's on.
I guess it all started with me mom. She never liked me.
Good work, Eustace.
I see a fair old woman with a bad wig who's in a lot of pain.
That's a big dose of reality.
I'm ugly. I'm ugly.
Then Eustace's mom gets therapy.
It all started out years ago with my mother's Auntie Griselda. She was a cruel woman. Made us all miserable.
And there it is. Now we've learned that this rabbit hole goes pretty fucking deep. This is beyond just Eustace and his mom. Now we can finally make sense of that fear that we felt as a kid. The fear that Courage felt when Eustace abused him. Where was that hate coming from? Why was Eustace like this? Because he's a victim first and then a villain later.
I ain't Eustace. I'm Eustace.
He's a victim to the patterns instilled in him from his own mother, who herself is a victim to the patterns instilled from her family growing up. These patterns are insidious, and it's very hard to break. It's the right thing to do, but so many don't do it because it's extremely hard, and it's far easier to just pay it forward. There's a moment where Eustace catches a glimpse of what he really is inside. In The Curse of Shirley, the whole day, Eustace's only remaining loved ones are trying to set up for his birthday party in celebration of him. All day, everyone is just trying to love him.
That man should really come to his own birthday party.
But they can't, because the person that really needs to love him is him. Their love can't get through to him until he learns to love himself first.
It's so hot. My head is burning.
Where's your hat?
I don't have one.
No hat? That's not right. Little blows about a little boy should have a hat.
Courage, you did the impossible. You got Eustace to give of himself.
You either grow or go.
Blah, blah, blah. I ain't growing, and I ain't going.
A villain is a perfect character to have discover empathy.
This stupid one has taken on the pain of his wife. He has learned to give relief and share pain.
No, Ma. You always look good to me.
Now I will show the world the difference between courage and fear.
Courage easily could have just closed his eyes to any of the phenomenon that came knocking, and then just let events happen as they happen. But that's not courage. Courage is action.
Anything
That's
worth
good.
value is worth fighting for.
The heart is a very strong muscle. It really does overcome fear. Nothing that I wouldn't do to prevent harm to someone I love.
You know, life is so terrifying. I guess the only way to survive, you have to be as scary as it is.
That's what gave courage is courage.
The things I do for love.
Especially people who suffer with a lot of anxiety. We didn't know what to do with our fear. He was the shining example of what you can do, even if you are afraid to tackle something.
And if little pink dog could face his fears, so could that person.
You've taught me the meaning of the word courage, courage, courage.
There's lots of rumors going on about that courage is modeled after the dog that I had when I was a boy. And it's probably true. I miss that dog, but it was a coward.
Courage, courage. I think you nodded off before I get to the ending.
We are celebrating the life of Muriel Barry, who had helped inspire Muriel Bag, of whose lap courage found consolation from all the terrors of that poor dog's life. And so, my dear Muriel, the one
this is so
quote
sweet.
you would often repeat: a cup of tea, a friendly chat, a cozy seat, simple things, hard to beat.
And that's the end of the story. Happily ever after.
That was good. That was really good. I thought that was good. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me for this late night live stream. I appreciate it. If you've enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'm planning on continuing a live stream Wednesday nights right now. Don't know when the next time is, like the exact time, but I'll see you then. You know, thank you again for joining. Hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for tuning in and stuff like that. Again, you can watch me here on YouTube, or I also have a Twitch channel, the same, The Beneficial Blerd. Y'all have a good night. Stay safe out there. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.